Hi there folks, it's a really sunny day today, but it's also very windy. I thought I show you what I will be working with my neighbor in the last few days. I apologize for the wind sound and my squinting, but the sun is really bright shining today. We have bright blue sky, which is a welcome change after a week of fogs and almost daily drizzle. Let me turn the camera around. So this is our northern fence. This is the border of our plot, and on the other side is the animal yard of our across the street neighbors. And the fence was made many years ago by using the same type of metal, which is similar to what is known in the USA as the cattle panels, but those are actually the meshes you use for pouring concrete. Those are the cheapest fencing options around here, and they have stood for maybe 30 years now. They seem rusty, but they're very sturdy. It's all handmade by my neighbor. The problem is that the size of those squares, it's 10 by 10 centimeters. It's large enough so the hens and the newly hatched chicks can easily cross over from their yard to ours. And as their yard does not really offer much grass and forage opportunities, besides the fact that it's being turned into a scrapyard in the last 30 years. So the birds really prefer to come into our yard, which is fine most of the time, especially when the garden is growing. But there are two problems, or maybe, probably I should say, there are two periods in the year when crossing over hens and chicks can be a problem, and those are in early spring when we're starting the garden and everything is either seeded or just planted out a seedling, and then in fall when we're spreading winter rye as a cover crop, and also our garlic is sprouting. You can see that along the fence line there are piles of bricks and roof tiles and metal scrap pieces, along with all the trees that grow here. So when the hens cross into our yard, the first thing they do is they scratch away all the mulch from our raised beds. So all the straw mulch which is on top of the raised beds ends up in the paths. And the other problem is that they eat away all of the scattered rye seeds. You can see here, I will include a link to the previous video where I planted those two blackcurrant bushes out. This was 20 solid centimeters of straw, which is now spread around in a 3-meter diameter circle around the bushes, and the underlying cardstock is torn to pieces. So I'll have to reapply that mulch and probably a bit more cardstock here. This was done in just a couple of days after I planted those two bushes, and they lost interest afterwards. And you can see here that along the path there's plenty of mulch and of course not much seeds left. I looked for those in one of the raised beds. And also what you had to do is use this very thin green bird netting to cover our garlic bed, which I think I showed a video of how we planted it, because the birds were eating the garlic tops. My online friend Nisa from Australia was complaining about her guinea fowl having a dust bath and eating and pecking at the garlic. and we had a similar thing happening here. You can see here that the garlic is now sprouting through the bird netting, and the hens have been climbing on top of this bird fence in an effort to peck at the garlic leaves. We used those metal rods for support, but the weight of the hens tore the mesh and collapsed it. So we have to remove that now. At least some of the garlic was saved. You can see that it's germinating nicely. I'm certain that not all of the 350 cloves we planted will survive, because quite a bit of them were pecked, but maybe they will regrow in spring. Those types of raised beds, which we have started making in the last few years, have suffered less from mold spread because of the sides. The wooden sides limit somewhat the scratching of the hens, but still they have eaten most of the winter rice seeds. This bed was seeded very heavily, just for comparison, and we don't have a single plant of winter rye germinated so far. But anyway, that's one part of the problem. The other part is that when the hens cross into our yard, this here is the microforest and then is the open field, and most of the predators that eat the hens come from this direction, and our yard is not fenced down here. So birds coming through this fence and down that orchard and down into the forest usually don't come back. In fact, for this season, spring and summer and autumn, our neighbors have lost 40 something chicks and hens. So yeah, it's a good idea to try and limit their passage through that 70 something meter long fence line. And there's another aspect to this. When we construct our hen house and we run birds here in the orchard, I've talked about that in the past videos, but I will quickly recap that for a minute. So the idea is that down here in the orchard we'll be running pastured layers and broilers. We'll have a low fence separating the vegetable and garden and the orchard, so the birds will be rotationally grazed in effect down the orchard. So me having to reinforce or secure that fence line was a project which I was planning to do either way in the future when we get our birds. And it's very nice when those synergies occur, usually on their own. So our neighbor also now has incentive to secure the fence, and we decided to split the bill for this chicken wire and install the chicken wire on our side, because as you can see their side is pretty much inaccessible in long stretches of the fence line. And we started doing that. We got 4 rows like that one. Each one of the rows is 25 meters, so it has to be enough to reach down there and turn a corner down their property's fence towards the forest. And the hens, they're very adaptive, because we started from the top, and up there at the beginning of the wire mesh of the chicken wire, that was their favorite place to cross over for the last few months. The minute I mean, maybe not the minute, but the same day when we installed the chicken wire, this was their favorite spot to cross, and I'll explain why in a minute. But the day we installed the chicken wire, they already have found two new favorite spots where it's clean of building materials and they can cross over easily. And here I have started creating a small hedge of Juneberry, Amelanchier plants. I already have planted 2, 3, or 5, maybe 8 little plants. They are spaced very tight together so they can grow in a hedge-like fashion. Those from last year, they rooted well, imported from Poland. 8 different varieties here, and because I mulch them heavily with mowed grass and then with some straw when there was no more grass to mow, this becomes the favorite spot for the hens to forage and scratch. There's lots of worm activity here, lots of micro arthropods in the soil. It's a living soil, but you can see that here they scratched all of the mulch away, and now we are down to the original soil, so I'll have to reapply some straw mulch. Occasional grass mat here and there, but most of it is gone. It's either eaten or decomposed or just thrown around and absorbed by the soil. So what we have to do in the coming days, when time and weather permits, is continue installing the fence, and I'll try to make a time lapse. I thought that it would be a rather fast and straightforward process, but it turns out that this stretch of 25 meters took us to almost 3 hours to install, because even at 1 meter height you have to do at least 3 metal wire attachments to the other fence, so it's not easy. And we also left a bit of a skirt here of about 15 centimeters so as to discourage digging, and this will be covered with leaf and soil and plant in a couple of years, so it will be mostly invisible. So as I was recording this video, my neighbor came over and we decided to start working soon after that. So I set the camera to time lapse and recorded a few minutes. At first it was late in the afternoon and the kids were around. You can see the toddler playing with one of the cats and helping my neighbor doing a bit of a trim on the vegetation along the fence line so we can work easier. After that we started unrolling the chicken wire. You can see that along the fence line there are some saplings which we try to preserve, although the toddler put quite an effort trying to cut one of those with a pair of pliers, not successfully, but still. So the way we work is we unroll a stretch of the chicken wire, and then I secure it at the top at the height which we want it to be, and then I go back and start doing the middle and the bottom ties. We're also stepping on the mesh to make it bend at the soil level and form a kind of a skirt to discourage the digging, as I showed you earlier in the video. And that also straightens the mesh. In the small white cup I had 70 or 80 pre-cut pieces of metal wire, so we can work faster, but at some point those finished, so we had to continue cutting from the wire roll that my neighbor carried. And this time, because the area here is a bit cleaner of vegetation and we were more prepared, this 25-meter stretch took us maybe 2 hours as opposed to more than 3 for the first stretch. So that was all for today, folks. I won't be shooting more on that video, rather I'll be finishing up and uploading that, and I'll just post an update when we manage to finish the whole stretch of the fence line and see if the hens stop coming into our yard. Have a good day, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.